to an album that came out 2 weeks ago. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers from Kendrick Lamar. Damn, it's been a minute, man. 2017, we talked about Damn. We haven't really heard much from Mr. Kendrick until this album dropped. I mean, I guess we got a single the week before, right? The Heart Part 5.
Yeah.
Give me your quick review of that track.
Well, it was just cool to hear another entry in the Heart series, a decade plus spanning single set of songs that Kendrick Lamar has released, usually in the anticipation of his forthcoming albums. I believe Heart Part 2 is actually on his mixtape Overly Dedicated. The subsequent 3, 4, 5 have all been one-off singles. 4, of course, was in the lead up to Damn. Now we have 5. Notable music video, deepfakes of Nipsey Hussle and Kanye West,
Jussie Smollett,
Kobe Bryant, Smollett. In a sense, setting the tone in a little bit for what to expect from Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. It's not my favorite of the Heart series. I think Part 4 is probably still my favorite, but I think it was just really cool that he released another one of these tracks. And I swear to God, I had really been thinking of, is he going to release another Heart song before this album? Because once we knew for sure that Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers was coming, and then he does it like the next day, I felt really smart, even if it was probably really obvious. But as you said, Kendrick's been gone. He's very unique in hip hop in this manner that he can be more or less absent for. I mean, it's been 5 years since the album. We had that Black Panther soundtrack at the beginning of 2018. That was probably the last gasp of when we heard him. Once the tours stopped in 2018. Since then, though, completely silent. He doesn't talk about stuff. He's just a ghost.
Yeah, and we didn't really hear a few features with Keem, but
then he pops back up with Keem because Keem's his cousin and now signed to his new record label, PG Lang. It's like even then it was like someone super connected to him that he would bother to, be around for. And now we know that this is his final album for TDE, Top Dog Entertainment, a label he's been signed to since 2005. We still don't really know what extent PG Lang is as a multimedia enterprise. So we just know him and Keem are involved, and Dave Free helped Kendrick found it. So a lot of TBD there. But regardless, it's the final TDE record, and obviously the last Kendrick album for some time. If we're being honest, I doubt he's gonna come back super soon again. But who knows? Maybe in a sense, this was him just kind of getting out of his deal, and he's gonna rush back soon, a la Frank Ocean. Who can say? But obviously, a ton of anticipation for Kendrick, and it's sold over 300,000, almost 300,000 first week with no physical albums available to purchase. So, still pretty impressive for an artist who is more or less completely absent. The anti-Drake. Drake is never gone. Kendrick is usually always gone, and now Kendrick's back. And it's not the album I expected to hear, but it's still very much a Kendrick Lamar album, and I think very interesting.
Yeah, you mentioned how you expect Kendrick to take some time off, and I totally agree. His albums are so dense. I mean, like literally, you could dissect this, and we're going to do our best to kind of highlight some of the biggest points. But there's so much in these albums, and so much that he's going for thematically, lyrically, that it's a lot to work through. And we're going to be doing a Kendrick Lamar rankings of all of his albums a little bit later on. So we're not going to be talking about where this falls today. I actually don't think I could talk about where it falls today because I want to listen like one or two more times to really get a sense of it and see how it sticks with me. So we just want to put that out there. Anyways, we got the album. You turn it on, you give it a listen, and you said it wasn't the album you expected, but did you leave this album satisfied? Were you like, Kendrick still got it, man?
Oh, he's definitely still got it. And I think the bigger question is whether I want to run this one back a lot versus running back his other records. Pimp the Butterfly was on my best albums of the decade list. Money Trees from Good Kid, Mad City was on my best songs of the decade list. Damn, a huge record, the only hip hop album to win the Pulitzer Prize. Like there's a big body of work to live up to at this point. This is his fifth album, and there's of course the mixtapes, and the compilations and everything. And I don't know. I could probably say I do know that I don't want to listen to this one as much as the other ones in terms of like picking out individual songs that I like. But I still have a lot of admiration for a lot of what's going on here, and I think it's a very interesting and probably important record for how Kendrick is approaching his artistry because it's his first album to be anywhere close to this personal.
Hmm.
And you think about it on the surface, like, oh, well, Good Kid, Mad City is about his youth and his coming of age, and To Pimp a Butterfly is about his role in society as a black man. But those are a bit more surface level, or at least guarded looks. To Pimp a Butterfly, much more top level societal things, right?
Hmm.
Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is Kendrick really peeling back and showing you who he really is and not being afraid to show some warts and blemishes and things people might not like to hear or find out about. And I think that's really interesting because, I mean, how many other artists could actually pull something like this off in as compelling a way as Kenny? Now,
Hmm.
again, that doesn't mean I want to listen to some of these songs all the time. Like the joint with Taylor Page, I'm not going to listen to that again. We cried
Oh,
together.
you don't want to hear them screaming at each other for
I
4 minutes?
can't say I do,
Literally
but
screaming too. Taylor Page was like losing her voice during it. Amazing performance from her, but like, yeah,
yeah,
not what I want to roll back all the time.
right.
You're not at the party and you're like, let's put on Cry Together right
I think not. But
now.
there's still a lot of things to, like you said, digest about this album, and it's certainly not boring.
No, definitely not. It's kind of like split, right? So it's an 18 track album, runs about an hour
Yeah,
12, hour 13,
he
and
teased it as a double album, even though
yeah,
it's actually shorter than some of his other albums. But yeah, it's technically two sides: Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers.
and there's a lot of parallels there, in terms of like the track listing, the songs, and how they kind of like align with each other. If you did split them down the middle, I have to say I did not take the time to kind of like piece those together yet and piece together the symmetry on it. Did you do that, Dave?
No, again,
No.
it's one of the huge failures of uh,
Spotify.
digital DSPs, digital streaming platforms, that they don't make something like that evident when it's like a dual disc situation.
But I definitely think that there's a lot to like on here, and like you said, I think some moments and some choices that probably aren't going to find me coming back to it. Um, and it kind of starts right away with United in Grief for me, which was like a very like disjointed and like very I'm not even sure exactly how to describe it. I think the first thing that came to mind was it felt like a song that could have been on Untitled Unmastered almost in a
Mm,
sense. It was like so like stilted and like
yeah.
kind of like jumping around from sound and what it was going for that I was like, "Huh, this is are we going to be getting this all album?" Luckily, the next track N95, which I really like, was a lot more traditional sounding as a track, but it feels a lot like a Kendrick thing to kind of put this very challenging, very singular song right at the beginning, and he's like, "This is what you're gonna get," and like you're either gonna sit with it or not. And I appreciate that. Although
Mm,
like I said, United in Grief, not a track I'm gonna run back. Although I do like when the drums kind of come in at that like I
yeah.
don't know minute mark. It's pretty cool.
Classic example of like the Kenny voice as it is. Uh, but yeah, like he grieves different. Got it. But
Hmm.
yeah, at 95 has been the biggest hit to this point. And when you see that title, it's like, oh god, what's he gonna go on about masks
Yeah.
or the vaccine, or it's like,
Hmm.
I hope he doesn't say something I don't want to hear. And it's not that he hasn't expressed like questionable views or anything before. He certainly has. He did it on Damn. If you go and listen for it, which is totally fine, obviously. But I think N95, like whether it's the "you out of pocket" refrain or
Yeah.
just the overall aggression. Once he
Hmm.
builds up to it, reminds me a lot of DNA.
Yeah.
Uh,
Good
off
point.
Damn, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. I also like his ad libs. You ugly as fuck. Like just so random, but I appreciate it. And I think the taking the mask off type of thing was like a clever way to like frame it, even if
Mm,
like it's coming at a time when COVID numbers are rising again in the country. So, maybe not the message we want to be sending. But anyways, I think that song rips. Um, a few tracks later, Father Time with Sampha, I
Oh
really
my
love. And hearing
gosh.
Sampha back on the track, man, I was like, just give us the album, dog. Just do it. We need it. The people need it.
We have had Kendrick Lamar come back. First album since 2017. We're still waiting for Rihanna and Frank Ocean for an album since 2016. You know what? After that, and my beloved ASAP Rocky 2018. Sampha, though, we haven't had a Sampha album since 2017. And every time we hear him on someone else's song, it's amazing. I
Hmm.
think whether it's Kendrick Lamar, Heady One, the Drake cuts back in the day, of course, Solange. He's batting 1,000 on these features. It's just incredible.
Hmm.
Neat No Chaser, baby. Oh
Yeah.
my God. It's such a good performance.
No chaser. Yeah, no, that's definitely a standout to me. What other tracks like stood out to you? What did you like?
Well, honestly, Kendrick on Father Time too. I really like the storytelling on there. I love the
Hmm.
production too, the way the beat drops in, but just the presence of the keys there. And then Kendrick just being like, when Kanye got back with Drake, I was very confused, and basically saying that like he doesn't think he could have done that if he was in that situation. It's like, man, he went there. I love
Hmm.
to hear it. Also shows how recent some of these songs are because he's directly referencing something from last December.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think Father Times. I think it's honestly my favorite track on the
Hmm.
album overall. Um, but I liked a lot of other stuff too. I thought Die Hard was pretty cool. I thought the Blast feature was very strong, coming off a really strong feature on the Kalani album we just got, and I thought Kendrick was really great on Die Hard. Um, Rich Spirit has been getting a lot of love. I think the hook, the flow is a bit different from Kendrick there. I think the production, little tweaks there, here and there, are really cool. Uh, I thought Count Me Out, his flow again on there, really fun. The choir there in the background, really nice. Silent Hill with Kodak Black, I think, is a really good song. And then kind of brings to the fore that it's like you hear Kodak Black on this. I think you hear him first on the interlude. Then you keep hearing Kodak Black on the record. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's been a huge talking point. Obviously, is it a provocation? What is the intent behind an album where he's kind of talking and shedding so much light about his family and what his mother went through, and Kendrick's complicated relationship with his own women in his life, whether it's his mom or his fiance, whatever it is. And then you have the repeated presence of someone who has been, directly charged with domestic violence and whatnot
Hmm.
in Kodak Black, and it's like, on the other hand, he's far from the. I think Craig Jenkins put this really well in his review. Most rappers, if you made a list of rappers that didn't associate with people associated with domestic violence, it'd be very short. So
Hmm.
I think it's just, for me, it's like just kind of weird to hear like Kodak be like a narrator of a big portion of this album, given the themes of the album, when clearly Kodak Black as a person through his own actions is at odds with those themes. This definitely took me aback.
Yeah. I definitely thought that was a weird choice, but Kendrick is also very thoughtful, and he might have picked Kodak out to be provocative. He might have been trying to say something, given some of the themes of the album. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah,
Only Kendrick really has that answer, and I doubt he's going to explicitly tell us.
he
So,
ain't gonna say anything.
yeah. So speculate away. For me, I mean, it definitely like stood out, but I was able to get past it and just kind of, like you said, kind of mark it up to like a lot of rappers associate with people like this. Although Kendrick is kind of at a different level, and maybe we should expect more from him on that. Um, just kind of moving forward though through the album and tracks I liked. I thought Purple Hearts, the track after we cried together, was very similar to Love, off Damn, and just kind of that like duet with a female artist, Summer Walker in this case. But I had a Ghostface Killa feature at the end, which I was like, damn, Ghostface still got it, man. He came on, kind of crushed it, and just got out like a minute left in the song, and that was so welcome to hear. Um, yeah, what other tracks I like here? Um, I think one that we probably should talk about
Oh, yeah,
is Auntie Diaries.
yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there in a second. But what other tracks were you digging
Hmm.
as you went through?
Yeah, we I don't have anything else more to say about "We Cried Together." I actually don't even know how effective I find it, just because it's like beating you over the head repeatedly, and I think the subtlety's honestly kind of lost. I thought Taylor Page was really crushing it. Wouldn't mind hearing her dabble in a mixtape, kind of like when I heard Zoe Kravitz on Ray Shremmerd back in the day, you
Mm,
know. But I, yeah, I don't know. I thought it was just grating, honestly, and not what I
it's a tough
expect from
listen.
Kendrick. Uh, I think just thematically, it's really interesting overall on this album. It's like Kendrick peeling back things about himself and his feelings, and like what he says on a few different tracks about like cancel culture and people holding their tongue and you're killing artists. And I find it interesting that like I'm not surprised that he has these feelings about these things. If you remember back when Spotify was gonna not promote Exodus Tentacion on playlists due to allegations against him, Kendrick came out of his cave
Mm,
unprovoked and spoke out against that action, and of course that was pulled back anyway. Kendrick has like a lot of like really specific thoughts about things, and hearing him kind of talk, uh, you know, reference Kyrie Irving and like talk about like uh, people having to sign their own wills if they speak out of line and stuff. It's kind of interesting to hear him point these things out because, like, I want to know, like, what are like the thoughts that you have that you feel like you're not allowed to share. You
mm,
know, later on the record, he's like, he kind of references how he's been like put on this huge pedestal by society and by white people and all that, and like how he's like, he's very aware of his own misgivings and insecurities and shortcomings as a person, and he gets into that, as a man in his relationship and things like that later. But I'm curious, is like, are you just kind of saying this as a point of view because that's how you feel, or do you actually have more to say on the matter that you're
mhm.
just holding back because he doesn't actually take it any further? I thought it was kind of weird to like bring something like that up, but then kind of like keep it moving and move on and look back on yourself again. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a interesting point. Especially, I think the song that you're referencing probably is "Savior" with
Mm,
Keem, where he kind of talks about
yeah.
that, like being put on that pedestal and kind of being seen as like the savior of rap, but also of like racial politics and like a voice for like change in the country. I mean, when you make a album like "To Pimp a Butterfly," people are going to, I think, naturally kind of think that of you. You know, that he obviously had a singular vision for that album, executed it perfectly. An incredibly thoughtful album. To some people, it's considered the best album of all time. That's how you know. That's how well it was made and and conceived. And so, I wonder though, like, are there people out there that like when something happens, like when there's a murder of a black man or a black woman, are people like, I got to hear from Kendrick on this? Like, we got to get Kendrick in front of a camera and talk about this, or is he feeling because he gets so much notoriety for his thoughtfulness on these albums that potentially he feels this pressure, even though
Mm,
maybe the expectations aren't there as well? I don't know.
yeah.
I know I don't necessarily look for Kendrick to be like the voice of all black people or racial politics in the United States in general. He definitely makes interesting songs about it, and I think very thoughtful songs about it.
Right.
But yeah, I think some of that like savior complex might also be self-imposed in some way. Um, but I agree. I'd like to hear him talk a little bit further about it and expand on it, or because I'm sure it's not just I have all this pressure and then no other thoughts about it. That's not really who Kendrick has proven himself to be.
Mm.
Um, kind of looking down the track though. I mean, after Savior, which I thought Savior was okay. Crown comes a few songs before it, and I've seen people kind of being lukewarm on Crown. How did that track hit for you? It's very toned back for him.
Yeah, not my favorite for sure. I like Savior more. I actually thought Keem was pretty solid on this. I know some people still a bit lukewarm on Keem as a performer. I was a big fan of the Melodic Blue last year, um, and I thought him and Kendrick have a pretty good chemistry. I liked Savior a bit more. Yeah, Crown definitely. one of my least favorite tracks.
Yeah, I agree. Didn't totally work for me, but I know some people are really getting some love for it. So Auntie Diaries has been a pretty controversial song, a track where Kendrick is really storytelling about a aunt who was a trans female,
Mhm.
and basically how he originally was taught to perceive people in the trans community, and then how his perspective grew over time and as he was educated. And what it's really been drawing a lot of criticism for is his use of the F slur in regards to people in the LGBTQIA plus community. And I think there's a couple ways to look at it. I think overall the message Kendrick wants you to take away is like a lot of people in the black community have the perspective that I had towards this, the
Mhm.
LGBTQIA plus community, specifically the trans community, and had this very bigoted perspective. And as I had this personal experience, I grew to see and understand what these people go through, and in his mind, legitimize their existence. Um, I do think he could have gone about it a little differently. I think he uses the F slur about like 10 times
Yeah.
on this track, and maybe tone it back about 10 times. But I think overall, like the message was good, execution not so great. Where'd you fall on it though?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I mean, you know, saying my auntie is a man now,
Yeah.
that's just, yeah, I think that's kind of like the crux of it for me. It's like you have these good intentions. I'm pretty sure I understand what you're saying and how you think. And good. Overall, if this song has positive impact in that way on other people making that connection, good. Good thing.
Hmm.
But he's doing it in a very ham-fisted way.
Hmm.
If you're gonna dead name your aunt, you know,
Yeah.
you're gonna use the F slur a million times. It's it's just not as effective as you think it is. I think it's really
Hmm.
ham-fisted and really pales in comparison to something quite similar to this, which would be "Smile" by Jay Z off 444,
Hmm.
where he talks and reveals about his mother coming out of the closet publicly.
Hmm.
I think Jay Z handled that with significantly more grace than Kenny being like, "Oh, my auntie is a man now," and like he's like processing how he was thinking. I
Hmm.
get it, but the way he's putting it out there publicly, I just found it a bit crass, and it's also been very frustrating to see Kendrick fans push back on criticism of this song, especially criticism in the queer community, um, because trans people shouldn't have to like explain why this song isn't as good as it should be. That's also very unfair to them. So I think people should be a bit more open to listening to that kind of criticism. Yeah, overall, I just don't think it's actually good allyship. A song
No.
like this, it's well intentioned for sure, but it's not actually in execution good allyship. So frustrating misstep for someone that we associate with so much greatness, like Kendrick.
Hmm.
He's held up as a great storyteller, a great songwriter, but that was not good songwriting.
Yeah, I completely agree. After Auntie Diaries, you only have a few more tracks on this. You have Mr. Morale, the title track, Mother, Sober, and Mirror. Did any of those hit for you, or did it kind of fizzle
Yeah.
out from there?
Well, I think Mother I Sober is a huge highlight because
Hmm.
that's where Kendrick talks about was it his mother's sexual assault in the past and how he reckoned with that. And is that also where he talks about his own sex addiction? Like
I think so.
the foul taste of Auntie Diaries is washed out pretty quickly because then you have this amazing storytelling once again from Kendrick. Super personal as he's ever been. That like I think a song like that's like kind of the ethos of Mr. Round and the Big Steppers because that is an example of what's so new about this album for Kendrick's standards because he was never that personal before.
Hmm. Yeah, and the way he delivers it even is in like this hushed like tone, kind of whispering almost, and I think it really adds to the meaning behind it, and kind of the way he's sharing this. It feels very intimate, which I like. So yeah, we kind of jumped around, but I think there were probably like 9 or 10 tracks that we really liked and thought were pretty good. A couple that were missteps, and I think everything else in between. I mean, there's a couple like interludes and things like that, but for the most part, a lot of this album hit for us. Um, I'm I'm kind of left sitting with it. Just in general, if it's not up there with "To Pimp a Butterfly" in my mind, or even "Good Kid, Mad City," but is it falling near "Damn"? "Damn." I think a more like commercialized perspective
Correct.
from Kendrick, and this a much more personal perspective. Do they kind of fall on the same level? I don't know. This is kind of where I'm thinking with my rankings as we talk. So
Yeah, for sure. I think that's definitely the crux of it right there, and we will do Kendrick Lamar full rankings. And there's a lot to talk about because he's got more than just albums too. So looking forward to handling that in full later in the year. So make sure you subscribe at youtube.com/nostalgiapod so you don't miss when those rankings do go live.